Presidential political strategist Dick Morris with us, sir. Always good to talk with you. Kamala Harris is giving a big speech. We were just talking about what happens if they do win this election, if they get their 4 years. Do you think Kamala tries to take the helm in 2024?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to talk about 2024. We're still in 2020. This election is far, far, far from over. And for your viewers, I would ask them to stay tuned to Newmax, not the other networks and not Fox News, because you guys are the only ones who are covering what's happening, not the network's prearranged scenario. Can I walk you through it?
Go ahead.
We're now at 214 electoral votes, plus 3 for Alaska. We're at 217. Alaska, we've had a 2-to-1 lead all month, all week. Then you have North Carolina, where we have an insurmountable lead of 75,000 votes, and it hasn't changed in 5 days. The networks haven't called it, but that's their problem. So 217 plus New Hampshire is plus North Carolina is 15.
Yeah.
And then you have Georgia, where there are only about 8,000 votes separating the two candidates. And I believe that there's an inevitable dynamic here, which is the first the first day after the election was Trump's day, because people that voted by machine that day overwhelmingly went for Trump. Then for 5 days after, you had a Biden dynamic, because they were up to counting the paper and the mail-in and the absentee ballots. Now is the third phase, where they're doing a recount and an audit and a recanvass. And in a recanvass, the voting machines aren't going to change. There could be some errors, but basically a machine vote is a machine vote. The change will be when they look at paper ballots and say this is disqualified, this was illegible, this was a non-voter, and they toss ballot after ballot. And in Georgia, where there's only a 9,000 vote margin, or 8,000, that's going to go away very quickly. Biden can't gain in that process because most of the mail-in votes went to him. He can only lose, just as Trump could only lose while paper ballots were being counted. Now add, therefore, Georgia and North Carolina to 217 and brings you to 248. Then you take Arizona, where the margin has already collapsed for Biden from 30 to 18.
Right.
And will undoubtedly continue to drop. I expect that by the time it's over, Biden or Trump will have won that race by under 10,000. But it makes no difference, because when they do the recanvass and they begin to look at these paper ballots, a large number of them are going to be thrown out, and we're going to win Arizona.
Yeah.
Then we get to Wisconsin, which is 10 electoral votes. And in Wisconsin, 20,000 vote margin for Biden. And in the recount, Arizona has the best recount facility there is. It's strictly bipartisan, strictly fair. Democrats and Republicans at every stage, not when the votes were cast, but when they're recounted. And that inevitable dynamic is going to take place. By the way, if you're a first-time voter, there's same-day registration, but you need a photo ID, you need a signature, you need a witness, and you need a verification of your signature. So no room for cheating there. So what's going to happen then is it's all going to come down to Pennsylvania. And Biden will be unable to win if he doesn't carry Pennsylvania, and Trump will win if he carries. Now, in Pennsylvania, the first thing that's likely to happen is that Alito and the Supreme Court are probably going to preclude any mail-in ballots that came in after the deadline. Biden's ahead by only 35,000 votes now in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And undoubtedly, the number of late ballots exceeds that by far. So Trump will probably win it right there. And then this process of reviewing the votes, vote by vote, going through paper ballot by paper ballot, will give Trump a lead.
You think he can get? I mean, he's 37,000 behind in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's a lot of votes, a lot of people.
No, it's not. You probably have about 100,000 votes that were cast after Election Day.
Really?
And when you think about the fraud that would go on with paper ballots, you know that most of those are going to be tossed. And let me say this. I was involved in a poll that took place on Sunday night with 1,200 interviews before the election. And we were carrying Pennsylvania by 2 points and carrying Michigan by 3.
Right.
We've won those states, and that will become apparent as they recount the paper ballots.
Dick, I gotta cut you there. We got your point, but we got the former.
Absolutely did not.
Well, if he wins, all the states are up on the board. It'd be a pretty solid victory, but it's not there because those votes have not been certified.
But I mean, you got like 6, 7 states that are right on the edge, 50, 49.
Including some big ones.
That's not convincing.
But again, if the president were in this position, he'd be doing the exact same thing. He'd be coming out and saying, I'm the winner, because again, in politics, possession is 10/10 of the law.
Right.
If you say you're one and nobody can stop you, now the president will try. We'll see how long he keeps his finger off the send button on Twitter, because this has got to be galling him.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Any politician's going to take this moment and is going to do the exact same thing. That is fair. Another thing, though, Mark, he said that he sought this office, that he sought political office to protect the backbone of this country, the middle class. This is somebody who has reigned over the middle class disappearing in this country for years, that has watched China eviscerate our middle class and take so many of our jobs, and has just stood by to let it happen.
Well, it's going to be interesting because the press didn't make him answer questions like that.
No,
like, what are you going to do different than Barack Obama? You're part of that administration. So if he's the president, we're going to see a lot of questions asked largely for the first time.
Yeah, well, let's see if they actually ask him any. I'd be curious about that. We're going to bring Dick Morris back because he's had some great stuff tonight. Dick, as we listen to this speech, I want to ask you the same question. Joe Biden saying that he sought political office to protect the middle class in this country. What do you make of that comment?
Yeah, he sought political office in 1988. He sought political office in 2008, and he's seeking political office now. I'm skeptical of that. He sought political office because he wants to be president. But the networks are still calling him president-elect.
Right.
And he's not.
He's not.
Until the Electoral College votes, he's not. Until the states certify that he won their state, he's not. And the networks are not in charge of naming the President of the United States. The Electoral College is, and the secretaries of state and the legislatures of the 50 states.
But Dick, let me ask, do they do this every 4 years? I can't remember when they started calling Trump president-elect. At what point did they start saying that?
They didn't consider him president after he was elected. The first day they worked on getting him impeached with this phony Russia thing. You have to realize this is the third coup d'etat we're watching.
Yeah.
The first was over Russia. The second was over Ukraine and impeachment. This of stealing this election is the third.
Let me ask you. We're going to bring it out in just 1 second, Dick. To Mark.
The difference, Rob, is the candidate who's currently behind didn't concede in this case. Hillary Clinton conceded the day after the election. Right. That allowed the news organizations to say, we have a winner, even though, go through Dick's litany, no certification by the states, no meeting of the Electoral College. But the tradition has been if the losing candidate concedes, then it's okay to call that person president-elect. That hasn't happened here, but the news organizations are saying their own projections are the ones that can determine it, even if it's being disputed by the candidate who's behind.
Interesting. Dick, how big of a mistake do you think the media is making and has made over the last 5 days?
Oh, I think cataclysmic. I think that when the full results are in, particularly if Trump is elected, there's going to be such a reckoning among the media. But let me just say this to those of you who are at home watching. There are 3 generic ways Trump can win this election. One is the votes get fully counted the first time. And in that first count, we could still win Arizona. The second way that he could win the election is that there is a recount, where you look at each ballot and it's carefully controlled, and the Democrats and the Republicans both have inspectors. And since they're basically processing mail and paper ballots, there's going to be a tremendous change, and all of it, day after day, will be pro-Trump. And the third is that the Supreme Court can weigh in, particularly in Pennsylvania, where its order not to permit voters to vote after Election Day was totally disregarded. And even their order to segregate those ballots was probably disregarded. And the Supreme Court will have its crack at it. And when you combine those 3, to say that Joe Biden has this thing won is an absolute fantasy. And their goal is to lull the country into sleep, to get us all into the idea of, oh, let's heal our wounds, kumbaya and everything, and stop fighting, stop working, and cast aspersions on anybody that's trying.
Well, Dick,